Hi everyone, my name is Natalie. Today I wanted to do a discussion slash a general chat about rereading. So I have never been a big rereader. The Little Prince has been one of those that I've read multiple times. The same could be said for The Wonderful Wizard of Oz by Frank Baum. So those two books have been sort of my only exceptions to the rereading. As a child I used to like discovering new books. And I used the library a lot, and I had a teacher when I was, I think, in the second grade or third grade. She loaned me some of her own books. I borrowed a lot of books both through her and through the library, so I didn't have the need to read the same thing over and over again. I wanted to discover new things, and that has sort of been the same way for the rest of my life, and I have reread those two childhood favorites, The Little Prince and The Wizard of Oz, several times, but they have been the majority of my rereading over a lifetime. And I've started to change a little bit my relationship with rereading because I think there is a lot of value in it. I think I've always seen the value in it, but I just haven't really felt like the things you gain from a rereading has been important enough for me. I've always felt like I have so little time to read as many books as I can out of the thousands of books I want to read in my life. So I've always felt like there's this, you lose time spending it on a book you've already read. But I'm starting to change that because I feel like in my head I understand that this is a very flawed way of thinking, and in my heart it has taken me a while to sort of accept that and to change the way I read. I posted a photo on Instagram for the book that I most recently reread and said that this year might be my year of rereadings. I've reread 3 books this year so far, which isn't that much, but it's a lot for me, and especially because these 3 books are books I haven't reread before. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the books that I reread and hopefully something that I learned from the rereading experience. The book that I started the year off with and actually started rereading last year, but I ended up finishing this year, is The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien, which is obviously the prequel to the Lord of the Rings trilogy. I read this a few years ago and I immediately fell in love with the story and the adventure, and it made me think that I might actually like Tolkien, so I have read The Fellowship of the Ring since reading this the first time. Upon my rereading, this was really interesting actually, because I realized that I like The Fellowship more than The Hobbit. The Hobbit is probably more popular on its own because it is very fast-paced. It is obviously an adventure in itself, so it's more complete, and because of that it is a faster pace. There is adventure on basically every page. There's a lot of things going on in such a short book, and so it's very action-packed, whereas The Fellowship is quite slow and more musings and things like that, and more detailed in the writing style, which I actually really like in Tolkien. And rereading this made me realize that I really enjoy the characters, especially Bilbo Baggins is one of my favorite fictional characters. He's not really into being an adventurer at the beginning, and he's so resistant at first, which I really like, and I just feel like that is much more relatable. He isn't born a hero, which again is something that I really like in him as a character. Rereading this made me realize how much I love him, but also made me realize how much I prefer The Fellowship. I like the adventures, but I find the dwarves so annoying, and there's a lot of singing in this book. But I'm hopefully going to be rereading the rest of The Fellowship and then continue on with the series, because I think I will really enjoy the entire Lord of the Rings trilogy. The second book that I reread this year I actually talked about very recently, and it is For Esme with Love and Squalor by J.D. Salinger, which is the short story collection that is also known as 9 Stories. I think that Salinger manages to capture something essential in each story, so that even though I don't love them all equally, there is something in each story that just makes me pause, that has me thinking and engages me in a way that not a lot of writing in general has this effect on me. Salinger was such a fantastic short story writer. He captures the fleeting moments of time, the sensory experience of a moment. Rereading this made me realize exactly what I'm looking for in a short story, and how Salinger is one of the masters of the genre for me, and how I will probably be continuing to compare all of the short stories I read in the future to his standards. So this was so fantastic, and I know I will be rereading the other Salingers that I've read sometime soon, hopefully this year, but we shall see. And the one that I just recently reread was Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. The main reason I reread this was because I wanted to read other books surrounding Frankenstein and Mary Shelley. That was part of it, and also partly because it is the 200-year anniversary for the publication of Frankenstein. So this was one of the first classics that I read and really loved. I thought that the themes it dealt with was really interesting the first time, but I feel like I could see more of the way she writes it this time. So there's no specifics going into the creation of the monster, and I think that in itself is a really smart choice for Mary Shelley in writing this book, because she doesn't go into the details about what Victor Frankenstein actually does in creating the monster, how he creates life. There's not an outdatedness to it. I feel like it would very easily be losing points in the future if it was very specific in the sort of the creation of life from the contemporary ideas about life. I feel like I could see a lot more of the nuance in her writing this time, and appreciate a lot of the things that she does, but also the things that she avoids doing, or the things that she wittingly not saying. So this was really interesting rereading for me, and I feel like also one of the things that I'm realizing is that rereading is interesting partly because you see new things in the book just by reading it again, but also because usually you've read other things in the middle, and so when you've read new works, things that have nothing to do with these particular books, you still have new information in your sort of your mind bank. It allows you to see new things that you wouldn't see if you had just reread it immediately after reading it the first time. So for example, I have just recently read Les Miserables, and because I read that, I sort of picked up on a lot of things specifically relating to that. For example, Victor Frankenstein is talking about guilt in relating to the monster, and the monster is killing other people, and how his responsibility comes into play, how much of that is his fault because he created the monster. And there is this moment when he has the choice to come forward to tell the truth about the creation of the monster and his role in it, but he decides to stay quiet, and that results in an innocent person being killed in his stead. And this scene really made me think of Les Miserables, where there is a scene where Jean Valjean is looking at another prisoner who has been mistaken for him, and he's at a trial. Jean Valjean is looking on the trial's process, and he can't stand just watching, so he ends up coming forward and being honest about the fact that he is Jean Valjean. And that scene captures, I think, how much he is a moral character, and how much Victor Frankenstein is refusing to believe his own guilt and in his own responsibility in the death that occurs in this book, and how Jean Valjean realizes the unfairness of this innocent taking his place and not being able to stand it. So there's these two similar situations and very different characters dealing with them and having different consequences. So I thought that was really interesting, and because I've read them so close to each other. But yeah, that was all basically I wanted to say about rereading. To sum up, I guess I would say that I'm starting to enjoy it. I'm starting to see more of the value in it, and I would like to make it more of a priority to really engage more with my books, and especially now that I'm starting to annotate my books, I feel like I'm adding more layers for my next reading when I have the annotations to read as well. So yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see how the annotations hold up for rereadings, because I annotate in pencil, so they might smudge. But we shall see. So I would love to hear your thoughts about rereading. Do you do it? If not, why not? And if you do, what do you love about it? Let me know in the comments. I hope you're having a really good day, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.